Today, we're going to see how we can stop copying and pasting code and different attributes all over our Xamarin.Forms applications and use reusable resources to style our application. From colors, integers, and full control styling, it's really easy to do and will save you a lot of time, so tune in. Hey everyone, I'm James Montemagno, and here on my YouTube channel, I have been doing a full Xamarin 101 walkthrough from building an app from scratch all the way to eventually publishing it to the App Store. We're quite far in our journey. If you've missed any of those past episodes, check them out right over there. Now, so far, we have gotten our application up and running, and we have information in a database, and we're making web requests, and it's looking good so far. But if you're like me, you start to sort of jam on code and you sort of forget to write reusable code. You're copying and pasting, you're trying to get things done, but creating reusable controls or creating reusable styles enable you to really be more proficient and more effective and create apps faster in the long run. So if you do a little bit of that work up front, it's going to save you time in the long run. Now, with Xamarin.Forms comes reusable resources that you can put inside of your XAML. And if you're a web developer, you may be thinking, that sounds like CSS, cascading style sheets. And actually, yeah, that's kind of what the resource dictionaries are, the resources and styles in your app. And in fact, they can be cascading. In fact, you can use CSS inside of Xamarin.Forms if you're a web developer. I don't, just because I'm not a web developer and CSS confuses me. So I like to use XAML resources. They're quite easy and the IntelliSense is really rich. And you can have all sorts of things inside of your XAML resources, from colors to full styling of your controls, and they can be as complex as you want or as easy as you want. And this is important because what if a designer comes to you and wants you to tweak a color or tweak a shadow or a corner radius? You don't want to have to copy and paste and update code in 20 different places. You can do it in one. That's because we're creating reusable styles and resources. So let's take a look and get started. All right, so here's the current application. We have a list of coffees that we can scroll through. We have a button that says load more at the bottom. And yeah, we have our application here. If I go to other pages like the My Coffee, let's say I pull to refresh here, we're gonna have a kind of similar view. We've been building this out a little bit differently and creating some, again, reusable controls. However, we haven't styled anything. In fact, if I go inside of here, we can see that on this page, the background color is set to white. Oh, down here, the refresh control color is set to red. And really, for example, down here, if I look at this frame, we can note that it says corner radius is 20 and the hash shadow is true. Now, if we want to add other properties, adjust the padding and margin, have them to be the same, I'd have to come to the other pages like My Stored Coffee, change the refresh color here, come down into my frame, and again, modify all of these. And it's kind of a pain, as you can see, because I'd have to update every single page. And as my application grows, we're in a world of hurt. So we want to clean this up. So let's come back into my main equipment page. And first, let's take a look at this red that's hard-coded in here. And when I pull to refresh, we can see that I have the red right there. So inside of here, we already have this resource dictionary at a page level. You can put your resources at a page level or at the application level. It's up to you where you want to put it. Now, I like to put things at a page level if I'm only going to ever access them at that page level. Obviously, that makes a lot of sense. But as soon as I put it on 2 pages, you want to put it in your app XAML, so it's only in memory once. So let's take a look here. And we can just add a quick color here. You can make this anything. Actually, it can be any resource. It could be a string, an integer, a color, or style, which we'll talk about in a bit. But we'll just do color, and we're gonna do $key. Now, the key is a name. It's a unique name that enables you to reference it later and pull it out of this resource dictionary. So we're gonna call this the refresh color. And let's make this orange, all right? So there's the orange color. So now, instead of hard coding this red, we can kind of do like a binding almost. It's kind of like what we're going to use here. Now we have 2 options. One is to use a static resource and another one is a dynamic resource. A static resource enables you to access that resource but it will never change. So it's not like subscribing to change notifications. And in this case, it's okay because we only have one color. A dynamic resource actually sits there and looks for changes and will update automatically. It's sort of kind of like a data binding. This is really good when you want to theme your application with different colors that are dynamically changing. Or for example, you may want to have a increased font size and it increases it on all of them. So those are dynamic. So when you change a base, it updates to all of them. For now, we're going to use StaticResrouce. When we talk about application theming in a future video, I'll go ahead and use dynamic resources there. But let's go ahead and pick refresh color. Note here that the Xamarin.Forms IntelliSense of Visual Studio picked up my app resources and my page resources. So now when I have my refresh color and pull to refresh, we can see that it's orange, which is pretty awesome. There it is. So now we have our orange that's inside of here, okay? Now, what's nice about this is if I was to go and say, let's make this, I don't know, red again, right? Let's go ahead and make this red. And it updates down here a little color picker. What we're going to note and see is that when I pull to refresh again, we're going to have our red color picker right there, which is really cool. Now, we could have it at this level, but again, I'm going to go ahead and now move it into our app XAML. Now note that actually this application already had one called primary, and it's pretty cool. But here I'm just going to say refresh color. And again, let's make this orange again. Oops. So make this orange. There we go. And save it there. So now over on this page, we can see that my orange is updated. And now if I go over to my stored coffee, instead of hard coding a red on here, I can come in and say StaticResrouce and say refresh color. Note that because I moved that resource up into the app.xaml, I could go ahead and use it. And let's look at that app.xaml. Here it is. I again have an application.resources, and then I have colors that are inside of here. So I could put anything inside of here, like I said earlier, like integers, other things like that, and you can just put them right in here. This key sort of value inside of it. Now, you can have as many as you want. So for example, there's a bunch of them that I pick by default and just put into my code. This is a nice one that you can grab from my repo, but these are official colors from Apple actually for system blue, system green. And they actually have another one, another set that I like to put in, which is the dark mode version of it. So they're very close, but we see system blue dark, system green dark, system indigo inside of here, which is really, really cool. So now we have all of these colors that are inside of here. So now we have all of our colors that maybe we possibly want to use. And in fact, I really like doing this, which is window background color. So this is a really cool one because when I'm inside of my application, what we often want to do is have a background color inside of here. So if I go to that coffee equipment page, instead of hard coding white, we can come in and we can say StaticResrouce, and we can pick that window background color and hit save here. And then now it updates in the background. Now, if we take a look though at this list view, right, we can see that we're setting a few properties like separator visibility, the refresh control color, and we've actually set it multiple times, you know, the has uneven rows. So we're actually setting the same thing over and over again, including caching strategy and background. So instead of creating like colors or properties that we would bind, we can create a style. So, you know, you can have a single color, but really styles is really the power here. So styles enable you to group a bunch of different properties and set them so you can set one property instead of multiple properties. So they kind of apply in this cascade. So let's go back to our app XAML. I'm going to come down to the bottom over here. All right. What I'm going to do is I'm going to say style and give it a key. So here we're going to say key, and I'm going to say coffee list view. I don't know, that's what I'm going to call it. You can call it anything you want. And you're going to say target type. And a target type is what is the base control. So it's any of the controls. And this is how we know what properties we're able to send and set, I should say. So I'm going to say list view. And now inside of each of these are these things called setters. And this is how we're going to set all of the properties. So the first thing we're going to do is has uneven rows, value true. Okay, and you can just close it off. Next one, we're going to say setter. Let's look at what else we have over here. let's do background color. So we'll say property, background color, value, transparent. Okay. Now we'll go ahead and close that off. Let's do another one. We're going to come in and we're going to now say separator visibility. Setter, property, separator visibility, value, none. Again, so it's very, very simple, right? I'm just getting rid of the code there. Let's do setter, and now let's do property, and we're going to say refresh control color. Now this is where it gets really interesting, because I don't want to just hard code that, this value of just orange inside of there. What I'm able to do though is I can actually come in and say value, and I can actually give it a static resource. Check that out. And I can give it anything inside of here. So for example, if I wanted to do orange and use system orange, I can totally use it there. That's really, really cool. So you can use static and dynamic resources inside of a style. All right. Now here's what we're able to do is one, coffee, there we go. I can come back into this page and we can start to delete this code that is sort of just generic, right? We don't even really care about these at all, right? So we can come in, and now what I'm able to do is I can say style, and I can use, again, a static resource. And now it shows me only the resources and styles for this control, which is a coffee list view. Now, if I did this correct, you should see that there's no differences here, all right? And in fact, if I come over into this My Stored Coffee, we can go ahead and delete this, delete this, delete this, and delete this. In fact, we could do a lot more, right? And we can copy and paste this in here. But what this now means is that when we have our pull to refresh here and it's orange, if I come back into my app XAML and I change this to system, let's say blue, and save it, it will now go ahead and automatically update the entire control, right? If I wanted the background to be pink for some reason, we can make the background pink on the entire control, but we're going to make it transparent, of course, and set it back over there. That's really, really cool. What we could also do is do another style. Okay, and we'll do X:\key, and we'll do a coffee card. All right, and this will be a target type of a frame. And what we saw earlier is that we had two properties. We had a property of has shadow and a value of true. All right. We also had a setter of, what did we have the setter of? Let's take a look at it. Oh, corner radius of 20. All right. Property, corner radius, value 20. And now we have our coffee card. So this means I can come to here, delete this completely, say style, static resource of our coffee card. Come back over here, come into my stored coffee, take a look at that as well, and boom, now we're good to go. Everything that we have now is reusable. All right, now what we're able to do is come in and we can change any of these properties. So if we wanted to set the corner radius, we could set it there. Additionally, one thing I want to point out here is that you can actually make these really dynamic. So for example, let's say you don't want the shadow to be present on iOS. You can actually put an OnPlatform and say on Android, set that equal to true here, and on iOS, set it to false. And now that will go ahead and work anywhere. So we have iOS and Android for the OnPlatform that's there. And you can have a default if you want of true. So this will set the default property values, everything for that specific shadow. This does get really nice because you can create really rich reusable styles. So for example, if I was to come up and let's say add another style here, such as a button that I have here, this is a button that I often have, which has things like black color, the width request, height request, the font size, the corner radius. This is a button that has a just a very simple outline around it. So if we go back into the coffee equipment page over here, so what we're able to do is come in and now say style, and I'll say static resource over to a button. Okay. Now we have the A button inside of here. So when I scroll down to the bottom of this page, we're now going to see that here, let me move it over, that we have this load more on the bottom. if I go ahead and remove this and hit save again, then it goes back to the old style. So just like that. Now here's another cool thing that you can do is you can create styles based on other controls. For example, I could come in and say style x:\key B button. Again, maybe not the greatest name, but I'll say target type of button again. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to say based on, and this will be another static resource, but it'll be of a button because we saw the A button up top. Now, what you're able to do is override any of the additional properties that are inside of here. So for example, if I want to be the setter property of text color and I want the value to be orange, I can go ahead and override that. Now you could set a bunch of different things inside of there, but that's a nice option. So now if I come back to this page and I set B button instead of A button, what we'll see is I now have the orange on there. Now I do want to point out that you can of course come in and I can set this to A button. You could actually override any of the properties. So if I want this to be red, for example, in here, it is going to override it. So you apply your style and then additional properties will be set on top of it. So you kind of have that fine-grained control to use the based on, or for example, if you want to use just overrides on top of it. I like to use something like this where I just come in and say B button, and now I have my B button override right there. So there you have it, kind of a nice way of overriding it, but always know that you can override an additional property. One thing I often like to do is something like this, which is coming in and creating like default labels. So if I copy and paste this in, for example, I might have a label, which has a dynamic resource to a text color, and another, B label, and a micro label, and another label, and another label. And they sort of just set the font size from small, medium, and large, but maybe the default color is black or white or orange or pink or something like that. So you can create these based upon ones here, where these all inherent from B label that's setting the color, but just overriding the font size. So it's going to enable you to really tweak that font size, that color, that control over and over and over again. Anyways, there you have it. It's really easy to start creating reusable colors, styles. You can put anything in resources and reuse them throughout your entire application. So when people ask me how do you style and theme your application, this is how I do it. I sit down, I say, let me create custom reusable styles throughout my entire application. There's a bunch of different open source libraries out there that have default styles, and there's some paid components too, some free things out there, some free things from like Syncfusion, from Grail UI Toolkit. There's a bunch of different styles you can just grab and put in your app, or take a look at some of the apps that I've written, or that maybe David's written, or Maddie has written, or anyone's written out there. I'll also put a link to a really cool GitHub repo. It's called like Great Looking Xamarin.Forms Apps. Javier has that put together. You just copy and paste all these styles into all of your code. Anyways, I hope you found this very informative, going through all the different ways of styling applications. And in a future video, we're going to take a look at those dynamic resources, especially when it comes to doing custom theming in your application. Hope that you enjoyed this video. If you did, give it a thumbs up. That goes into the Google algorithm of goodness, recommending it to other folks that watch this video. And of course, don't forget to subscribe and like and hit that notification bell so you get updated whenever I put out a new video. Really appreciate your time. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments below. And of course, I will try to get to them if I can. But again, thanks for watching.